Hey guys, it's Scarlett here. Happy Tuesday. So normally I do my little live chats at 5 o'clock, but today I have a reading booked for 5 o'clock, so I'm doing mine a bit early in the morning, but I will post this on my timeline after it's done. So if you didn't have a chance to check it live, you should be able to see it on my timeline as well. So what I wanted to show you today is I actually got a brand new deck. So I just got this new deck and it is the Night Sun Tarot. So I thought I would do kind of just like an initial thoughts review for you guys, and I'd love to hear too what you think of this deck as I'm chatting. So do feel free to comment. I'll be checking the comments as we go along here so I can answer any initial questions that you might have about this deck. So this is the Night Sun Tarot, and at first glance you can tell this is kind of a darker deck. And the artistic style is done with digital images, which isn't normally my forte when it comes to tarot art design, but I made an exception for this deck, and you'll see why. So I'm just going to open it here, and I apologize if there's some noise going on outside, but yeah, so this is the Night Sun Tarot. It comes with just kind of like a little generic booklet. I haven't had a chance to check that out yet. And we're going to start in with showing you some of the cards. And again, feel free to comment as you're watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So you'll kind of get a good feel on the art design and what they're really going for with this deck when you look at the Fool card. So here you have the Fool, and there's a lot of really interesting symbolism in this card and throughout the deck as a whole. One of the striking things is all these kind of arrows that you see, and that might be representative of chaos magic perhaps. You see some alchemy symbols in the corner. Here you have the symbol for air, which is also my business logo symbol. And you get a lot more kind of action with this card. It's almost like he's falling into reality in a way. Here his dog is kind of a wolf at his side. You got a Hebrew letter here on the corner as well. And a masked face with little horns, which is kind of unusual. And you'll see that some of these characters do have masks on, which is really neat and obviously something you don't see in a lot of tarot decks. The backings of this deck, pretty nice. We do have some sacred geometry that you will see throughout the deck. And I'll move on to a couple other cards to give you some more ideas. So here you have the Magician. And what's really interesting is you see he's in a seated meditation pose, one clasped hand holding that wand that you classically see in magician interpretation, one hand open, and then in his mouth, it might be a bit hard to see, but those are mala or Buddhist prayer beads that are kind of coming forth out of his mouth. You have a lot of sacred symbols here below, behind him. And it's a very unusual pose for the magician to be in. Normally he is standing, he's active, and here he is almost in this meditative pose, which is a bit unusual. You do see the classical representations of the four suits of tarot at his feet here. For the couple other cards here I'll show you. I probably won't go through the whole deck, but here is the High Priestess. Again, a very dark card. This deck here is really for someone who is looking into shadow work or looking maybe on more the left-hand path side of things. One interesting component, you'll see there's this egg in her hand, and the egg is a symbol that makes multiple appearances throughout the deck. So that's kind of a neat thing too. You'll see these kind of reoccurring symbols. The bird cage is another reoccurring symbol. Here you have the Empress. And Here the egg is broken in her lap. So again, it's almost like there's a story being told by a lot of these images. Here you have the Emperor. So you can see the Emperor and the Empress there together. And the Hierophant. This one is probably the reason I bought this deck. This one's really interesting. So you do have that kind of Christianized image of the Hierophant with the Taurus bulls in the background that you usually see, with the blessing hand symbol as well. But you see these two figures, and in a Rider-Waite deck, those would be the acolytes or the followers of the religious figure, but here they are working against him. And there's definitely a story being told by this card. Here you have one acolyte here, and he is holding what looks like a ruler and a triangle. Perhaps he is beseeching the Pope-like figure to listen to science or to expand the mind. And then here, the other figure actually has a dagger behind his back, as looks like he might be about to commit murder. And it's really interesting because for those of you that do take the tarot courses with me, when we talk about the Hierophant, we talk about it as a symbol of the structures within society. So religion is a great example of that, where there is a very specific hierarchy. You start at the bottom, you work your way all the way up to the top. And this card representing both that hierarchy, that structure, the fact that you should go with what is already established within the community. And then it also has that component of tribalism and where you define your group. So, you know, things like sports or different clubs also would work in the concept of the Hierophant. But here you see something very different. You see that underlying tension between that tension of not wanting to go with that conformity, not wanting to go in the direction that society is telling you to go in. So when you look at characters like the magician who seeks the divinity directly, he's pulling in that energy power from the universe, using it for his own will and directing it back into the earth. The opposite of that might be the Hierophant here, where there are multiple levels. You do not have access to that divinity directly, which is why a lot of times you'll see a crossed keys symbol in Hierophant, or also they might be called the High Priest or the Pope cards. And here you kind of see that imbalance occurring. Here you see that tension, that sometimes people will rebel against the system. Sometimes people do not want to go within the confines that society is telling us we need to go in. So I love how they kind of show that bit of an unsettling aspect to the Hierophant. And another thing too, this is card 5, and for the minor arcana, the 5s do definitely represent a time of instability. For example, the 5 of Pentacles, which represents two beggars outside of a cathedral, and that card representing need and want and scarcity. Another indication of instability. So I love how they're really drawing in more complexity to the Hierophant card than you would normally get in a Rider-Waite deck. But this card, super interesting. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. We have the Lovers card here. This card is actually reminiscent of a lot of older decks, so pre-Rider-Waite decks. You kind of see this version as opposed to the Adam and Eve storyline that you get in Rider-Waite symbolism. Here you have the Chariot, and the Chariot again is masked, which is really neat here. And I need to do definitely some more thinking about the masks in these cards. Like I said, I just got this deck actually last evening, so I'm still working with it and trying to decipher some of those symbols. But it's such a unique deck. Here you have Justice, and we have that classic Libra symbol, the symbol of the scales, and holding the scales. And again, that egg symbol makes an appearance as well again. Here you have the crossed feet, almost like in that Jesus on the cross feet, which is kind of unusual. You have a sun image behind you, and within the sun motif, you kind of get these endless amount of eyes, kind of like justice or truth is always watching that, you know, in the end, truth will win out. There is nothing you can do to hide from justice. So I do like that eye motif there. Yeah, so this one's a very unique interpretation of justice, and normally justice cards aren't my favorite ones, but that one I definitely do like. Here you have the Hermit card, and I'll just run through a few more. Here you have the Wheel of Fortune, and this card, or this deck, does blend a lot of East Asian symbolism and kind of spiritual beliefs. Here you have what I believe is, again, this is my initial impression, the I Ching represented behind it, and you definitely have this steampunk vibe here with the mechanics of kind of these creatures spinning the wheel. Here you even have a yin-yang masked face up at the top there. So another really unique interpretation. Here's Strength. I absolutely love the Strength card, Strength being one of my favorite cards within tarot. Very powerful image. Now the Hanged Man is really neat. You have him hanging upside down in the classic position with his feet in the 4, or the upside down 4. Here his head is in the birdcage motif that you see in some of the other decks. And here he's holding the key to behind his back, suggesting that he does have a way out of that cage. And then you have that tree symbol around him, definitely referencing, for those of you that are interested in Norse mythology, I definitely do get a connection within the Hangman and the story of Odin on the world tree as he hangs upside down to seek knowledge and sacrifice himself in order to do that. So I definitely get that connection between the Hangman and the story of Odin attaining knowledge of the runes and wisdom. So great card, great interpretation for the Hangman. Now, Death is another card that when I saw this, I was just like, I need to buy this deck, and a very unusual interpretation of Death. Here you have Death as a woman, and she is pregnant. Very unusual to see Death as a female and also to see Death as pregnant, but it's the perfect metaphor because Death not necessarily being so much about death, but in being about transformation. And in a lot of Death cards, you do see the Grim Reaper, but you might see flowers or some type of growth behind him, suggesting that, you know, while things might die, new things are reborn. So a perfect analogy here with the pregnant Death in this case, because while things do end, new things are beginning. Just a reminder of that cycle that you see throughout tarot, throughout your understanding of many of the different cards are constantly referencing that concept of the cycle of life. So really powerful and very unique interpretation of Death. Really love this one. This one and the Hierophant, I think, are probably my favorites in the deck. Here you have Temperance. And here the chalices that she's pouring to, one is like a red liquid coming out of a chalice in the shape of a man. So out of his mouth almost. So it's kind of like blood coming from the mouth, kind of that disease perhaps, or that stress, that imbalance that comes when you are not fully balanced within your lifestyle. So great interpretation there. Here you have the Devil. So here is a very dark card, definitely, and I'll definitely need to look at this one a little bit more as I spend more time with it to uncover all of that hidden symbolism in there. The Tower, very dark interpretation. Out of the window, you almost see what looks like bodies, kind of just, you can't really tell what they are, but they're just kind of falling out of that window. You really get the kind of apocalypse vibe with this one. So that's, you know, again, that you got that dark red with the Devil card. And then you move into the Star and kind of the healing qualities of the Star here. Again, a lot of symbolism contained within this card. And the Moon. And the Moon is great because you can look at it both ways. Again, maybe referencing that cycle. And the Moon here, again, the blue tones, the wolves, and the kind of skeletal-like females, and it looks like they are pregnant again in this image, so really interesting. So I probably don't want to go through all of the cards here today, but I did want to give you just kind of a little indication of this deck and my initial thoughts just from kind of unboxing and seeing what I think about it. But I'm definitely going to be working with this deck a lot more. I'm going to be writing some journal entries and probably making a longer video once I really dig into a lot of that underlying symbolism that's inherent in a lot of these images. So for now, I will probably do another Facebook Live maybe tomorrow. In the meantime, if you are interested in booking a reading, either with this new deck, you might be the first one I do a reading for if you want a reading with this deck, so that could be fun. Or any of my other decks, you can always do so at Arcane Alchemy, or that's arcane-alchemy.com. If you're interested in booking with me. And till tomorrow, hopefully, I hope you all have a great day. And again, do please tell me your thoughts. I'd love to know your initial opinions of this deck in the comments below. So I'll talk to you later. Bye.